It's to build, really. It's to build stability. It's not a retreat. I've always thought this word is a misnomer in the Buddhist context. I suppose you could make some Buddhist programs retreat, but this is really, I call them intensives. Intensives, if you approach it with the right attitude, it helps. But if it is intensive and you approach it like it was some punishment, then it will backfire. Anyway, then because in Asia, effectively is Saturday morning, and so they will continue, the participants in Asia, while we go to sleep. Then our session on Saturday will start in the morning at 8, which you guys will be 7. Then that's the first session, and then there's an hour break, an hour or 2 hours even break in between session. Then I think, if I remember correctly, we go from my time 11:30 till 1, and then there's break. And then I think maybe 3 to 5:30, then there's break. And then anyway, there's like a few sessions during daytime Saturday. Until 11:30 p.m. New York time, Saturday. Then Sunday morning, 1 session. Because in Asia, they are already midnight on Sunday. So then we end on Sunday morning. So effectively, it's really a 1 day. Like Friday night for us is the the opening, and then Sunday morning is the post. Effectively, it's 1 intensive day of Saturday. So we say that if you want to be a full participant, then you register. And if you look at my Facebook page or Urban Dharma, more detailed information is there, and how to register is also there. How to register is really simple. At the bottom, you enter your email address, you hit register. Then you get something back that says confirm your registration, just to make sure you're not a robot or whatever. Then, it confirms it. I have to warn you, the confirmation, when it spits back something at you, we have not figured yet how to change those words there, but it goes to something like, good job, like you are subscribed now. It's like something like that. I'm like, that's not quite the tone of this, but what to do? So that is then the Sunday before that. Also, all that information is on my Facebook update. But the Sunday before that is a walkthrough of the practice. The sadhana is quite long with all the different parts. But the Sunday before, I will do a walkthrough for people who want to, kind of have an idea of what this is. But for the most part, during all these sessions, it's just the mantra recitation. And so if you don't want to have like too much stuff like jam up in your head, this means this means this means this means this means this, you just want to do the medicine Buddha mantra for healing, for all beings, all that, then I said, just do that way, don't get all like, what does this mean? What does that mean? All of that. There are some details on if you want to be a full participant, how, what are the requirements there are, so that it's there. Then if you don't want to be a full participant, then it will be live streamed on Facebook, on several Facebook pages, because different centers are all involved, so they will also live stream on theirs or share the live stream. And so you will probably be able to kind of come and go by going to that live stream. So that's the middle of August, this particular Medicine Buddha. The mantra here is a little different from the usual mantra. Longer. This particular practice was in the notes in this sadhana, it says that this was particularly used by, or this is particularly used for the blessing and empowering of medicine. So this was one of the Drigung Kagyu throne holders, the 21st, one of the most kind of prolific and mastery of all fields of knowledge. He was trained as a physician as well. So he developed a branch of Tibetan medicine that is known as, like the Drigung medical tradition. So he developed a branch of medical tradition that produces a particular type of like precious pills. And he would use in his own time this sadhana to empower and bless those precious pills. The precious pills are more in the medical tradition than in the Dharma tradition. Although in Tibet, they are, you don't really separate completely. But today in like Tibet, China, there are, facilities that make these precious pills in a secular way. Of course, for Tibetans, they're like, oh no, if it doesn't have the traditional mojo, it's not going to work. So then to translate to what we take, so again, like in the more detailed information, it says, you can gather your supplements and your medicine and place them in the retreat shrine. And then this is a way to add mojo to your medicine and your supplements. That's middle of August.
Great.
So what did y'all do last Sunday?
Last Sunday, we read chapter 19, Meeting Jampa Gyakpupa.
19, yeah.
203, page 203.
Right.
Just one.
It was short. We thought we could talk about it because it was short.
Right. So do y'all have like anything that came up that was interesting? And, let me get a chance to scan this quickly.
Can we read it again? It's really, really short.
Mm-hmm.
We did have, actually, I have in my notes that we had a question about the structure of this song, the 3 times the 7.
Say that again.
There's 3, every verse has 3 lines. And then there's 7 verses or 7 points apparently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what is that? And we recognize that the 3 and 7 are both numbers, that come up a lot. And we just wondered what that structure represents.
Right. It's just magic numbers, Like culturally.
I was asking before that if we could just read it again. I was trying to ask if we could read it again.
Yeah.
Because it's short and a lot of people weren't here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see. So this is called the 21 points of mind.
Right.
Yeah. So as pointed out, it's organized into 7 sections. Yeah. So these sections, the 7 sections are the 3 greatness, 3 penetrations, 3 accomplishments, 3 pacifications, 3 kinds of expertise, 3 aspects of seeing, and 3 gatherings. So those are the 7 groupings. So from page 203, so 1 is secret mantra, the great path of means. 2 are the great key instructions of the Guru. 3 is great perseverance in meditation. These points are the 3 greatnesses. And then under the 3 penetrations, 1 is prana control penetrating the vital point. 2 is mind itself penetrating into the expanse. 3 is penetrating mastery over the mind. Then the 3 accomplishments. 1, the command of the Guru is accomplished. 2, the reality of one's mind is accomplished. 3, benefiting others is spontaneously accomplished. For the 3 pacifications, 1, the outer obstructing spirit and demons are pacified. The inner afflictions are pacified. And then 3, sickness of body is pacified. Then the 3 kinds of expertise. 1 becomes expert in poetic words. 1 becomes expert in answering questions. 1 becomes expert in the nature of mind. Next is the 3 aspects of seeing. 1 sees bliss as not a real thing. 1 sees appearances nakedly. 1 sees them as free of labels. Then finally, the 3 gatherings. The people gather together. The enjoyments are gathered together. The dakinis are gathered together. These 21 necessary points of mind dawn in the yogi's mind and were put to song. In general, Dharma practitioners should cherish them well. In particular, my disciple sons should cherish them well. For only a few in 100 will the necessary points come together. Therefore, attaining liberation is very difficult. Now, while these necessary points have come together, even though they are difficult, put them into practice. So here, this particular teaching was given in the context of a Gana Chakra gathering, a gathering to offer a feast offering in the context of Vajrayana practice. So in part, the last 3, the 3 gatherings, that is playing off of the name of this ritual, Gana Chakra. Gana Chakra is the gathering of the ganas. And the ganas here are the practitioners. So the last group of 3, the 3 gatherings, is not talking about random or gatherings outside this context. More specifically, it's talking about in a Gana Chakra, there are 3 gatherings: the gathering of the people, the gathering of the offerings, the enjoyments, and the gathering of the dakinis. And these dakinis are not talking about outer dakinis. It's the gathering of the dakinis. In fact, dakinis, we have gotten into the habit of thinking of it as female, right? Actually, in Sanskrit, people have back translated this into dakas, but we don't really encounter the use of dakas in Sanskrit. dakinis in Sanskrit could apply to male or female. But even here, also not talking about male and female entities. It's talking about the gathering of male and female energy that is within the body. And so there are 21 nodes, gathering points inside the body. And especially it said that on the 10th and 25th day of the lunar calendar, energy can be harnessed, male and female, to be present in the 21 points. I mean, sorry, not 21, the 24 places within the energetic body or the Vajra body. And then in the external world, especially in the landscape of India, there are 24 places, holy sites, that historically in the past, the Mahasiddhas would gather on the 10th and 25th in these 24 places. So there's a correspondence system between the 24 external gathering places and the 24 internal gathering places. Yeah, so that last one is talking about that kind of gathering. Yeah. So now we go back to the first gathering. So then back to that question that arose, 3, 7, these are very common numbers. When I say they're magic numbers, it's that, they resonate with the audience, 3, 7, 21, so it's a convenient device, You can just imagine, if there was a society that had a different, like different numbers was significant, right? Then, we might not be talking about the 3 kayas. We might be talking about, 7.5 kayas. Yeah. But there is no, Buddhism did not begin in a cultural context where 7.5 was a big number. If 7.5 was a big number, then the Buddhists would articulate, because, which also tells us, that when it comes to like the nature of things, it can be expressed in terms of expressing or communicating the true nature or the true reality of phenomena. It's up to Buddhists, to skillfully communicate that in terms that is understandable to us. So 3 and 7 was very understandable or resonated with the audience. If you want to go transculturally and look at 3 and 7, in a way, I've seen attempts to explain 3 and 7 transculturally, but still within human culture. 7 is like 7 days of the week, something to do with the movement of sun and moon and cycles, right? 7 days a week, because more or less universally, not 100%, but more percent than less, recognizes 7 as one cycle. So the Chinese, Asian, Tibetan, Korean, lunar calendar, still 7 days a week. The Western, 7 days a week. Yeah, so 7 is recognized. Then 3, I have seen 3. I have seen where it's 3 as in some speculation. Like you have 2 gathered, biologically speaking, then a third arrives. So somehow 3 is when you have true kind of like gathering in the very basic biological sense. Yeah. So as far as I could tell, those are the numbers 3 and 7.
Did you just? I can't hear you. Did you turn off your mic?
Yes, I have a godchild needing attention, asking if the chickens have been fed. So I'm muted to have a discussion about feeding chicken.
Okay.
Questions or comments so far? So Milarepa's system of teaching Mahamudra, which is what this whole book is really about, through various songs, through various instructions, the heart of where he's taking his audience to is the Mahamudra style of training the mind. Yeah. Then when it comes to Milarepa, he taught Mahamudra basically from a Vajrayana context. More specifically, the way he would train himself and train his disciples in Mahamudra practice is primarily through Vajrayana methods. And there, what are we talking about specifically? We're talking about both generation and completion stages of deity practice. Generation stage is, visualizing oneself as Buddha, the main point. And there are many different points in that training. Yeah, lots of details, such as like the body mandala, like understanding all the different parts of the body as aspects of the deity and the deity's mandala. So all that kind of practices and trainings for the generation stage. Then in the completion stage, first you master completion stage with signs. Then you place your mind in completion stage without signs, without characteristics. The signs, completion stage with signs, with characteristics, is basically what we commonly call the 6 yogas of Naropa, or the 6 dharmas of Naropa. Then without signs is the Mahamudra without characteristics. So Milarepa primarily trained and taught his disciples Mahamudra through the Vajrayana context. It was Gampopa in the next generation that began to transform the way in which Mahamudra is taught and practiced. Gampopa started to introduce and train some of his students in Mahamudra without explicit Vajrayana. So in Gampopa's writings and recorded teachings, you can find references to what he sometimes calls Sutra Mahamudra and Tantra meaning Vajrayana Mahamudra, and essence Mahamudra. So that category of essence Mahamudra suggests that there is a Mahamudra that, rather than a third category, I would say, basically what he's doing is he's saying Mahamudra can be taught primarily using Sutrayana vocabulary and methods, or it can be taught through Vajrayana vocabulary and texts. As long as the essence is given, it can be given in either way. But you should be aware that in the songs of Milarepa, primarily he taught Mahamudra using Vajrayana. Of course, he also gave a lot of fundamental teachings, about renunciation, about bodhicitta. Yeah. So in that sense, yes, Hinayana, Mahayana. But when it came to Mahamudra practice, he always frames it in Vajrayana terms. So like the first line of these, of the first section, secret mantra, one is secret mantra. That is a great path of means. There he means you have to start with that. Then you combine it with the great key instructions of the Guru. Then you combine it with your great perseverance in meditation. When you have these three greatnesses, then, you are on your way. Questions, thoughts, elaboration?
So the Gampopa's.
Sorry, go ahead. My
Yeah,
chicken
no, it's just,
chicken issue continues.
Yeah.
Yeah, continue.
Feed the chickens.
I'm curious about, Gampopa's
Excellent.
indicating that you could teach this,
Mahamudra.
Mahamudra and the Sutrayana method.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, and I can sort of see that, in the Mahayana when you're getting into Shunyata and that it seems to be a kind of in that realm. Is that what you're talking about? Or is it actually all the way back to the Hinayana as well? They're both Sutrayana, right?
Yeah. Well, by Sutrayana, it really means Mahayana, and by Mahayana, it really covers Hinayana. With that understanding, you cannot have Mahayana, floating around somewhere without Hinayana. So it's implied.
Yeah.
But in terms of Sutrayana Mahamudra, then the instructions will quote sources like, especially the Uttara Tantra, which is a sutra, the Gyut Lama, the Peerless Continuum, I think has been translated as that. It is a treatise attributed to Maitreya. And they will quote Lankavatara Sutra, they will quote Avatamsaka Sutra, and then primarily the training then is training in Shamatha and Vipassana. And then, of course, Mahamudra style Shamatha and Vipassana. Yeah, so then the Kagyu lineages that trace themselves back to Gampopa basically took the cue from Gampopa. And often, and then it varies from the various, Kagyu family branches. It varies as to, essentially what you see among the various various branches of the Kagyu family, basically a combination of both is used. And sometimes a particular branch of the family might emphasize the 6 yogas more strongly than others. Right? And when they emphasize more strongly, then clearly they're leaning more in Milarepa's direction. Right? When they start de-emphasizing 6 yogas, then you could say they're leaning more in Gampopa's direction. Yes, Karen.
I was going to say that, I mean, the sutras are beautiful. You know, they're gorgeous. I mean, that's where we get the basic stuff.
Yes.
For, you know, what we're reading in the, in what you were talking about from Milarepa or whatever the name is. But I think that I have more questions when it comes to this kind of writings than the sutras, because the sutras explain what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like when it gets to this, it's a little more heady, and you know, I have more questions.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with whether it's beautiful or not beautiful, for that matter. You know, this is very advanced stages of training. And I'm saying that Milarepa represents a style of practicing Mahamudra that was the main way, which is Vajrayana control. Harnessing energy, moving energy around, practicing tummo, inner heat, causing all your channels to open up. All of that is Vajrayana. And Milarepa was a master of that. Yeah.
Well, I was talking about, to me, I think it's, you know, all beautiful. That was just my thing.
Yeah, but yes, I mean, sure. But the point here, again, pay attention that Mahamudra, until Milarepa's time, is primarily taught the way that Milarepa learned it and the way Milarepa taught it, which is what you're going to find here. Post Milarepa, Gampopa is going to take it, balance it out in teaching Mahamudra, often without referencing the harnessing and the channeling of energy, the, you know, all of that. Yes, Melissa.
I feel like you've definitely talked about this before, but could you remind us what secret mantra means?
Vajrayana.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a synonym. It's actually a more common, in Tibetan material, that is the term used more often than Vajrayana. This is a legacy of Trungpa Rinpoche's vocabulary. He didn't pull it out of a hat. It's definitely there. But in the Tibetan material, you're more likely to encounter secret mantra.
And secret just means...
I can't tell you it's secret.
Just means, you know, specialized.
Huh?
Okay.
It's just, you know, an expression.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I mean, depending on context, right? I've talked about outer inner secret. So outer inner secret, secret means, you know, the most essential level. And it's so essential and so ineffable that it's a secret in that sense. It's a self-secret, you know.
We spent some time stumbling around prana and vital point.
Yeah, that's part of the Vajrayana business of harnessing energy, and prana is one type of energy.
When are you going to teach us that?
Oh no, because that's Vajrayana stuff, you know.
Oh, come on.
That cannot be, you know, taught. And so the point I'm actually moving to is to say Gampopa's using of non-Vajrayana methods to communicate Mahamudra much more applicable to us. Because to do this prana business, you have to go into retreat. You have to say, you know, I don't have anything else that interests me in this world. Yeah. There are some basic like maintenance of physical body health things that you can practice from the Vajrayana, for sure. Like the vase breathing, you know, 9 rounds, this, you know. In fact, you go on YouTube, you know, they have, you know, breathing out, you know. Basic maintenance, sure, you can do that. But to the degree that Milarepa is talking about, then I think, you know, I know there are people offering courses like that in person or online, but it's at best skillful means. At worst, it's what they call, you know, trading Vajrayana, you know, at the marketplace. So in that way, I'm conservative, but also I'm conservative because, you know, I really, you know, I never had the background of training in, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of retreat. Even the people in 3-year retreat, you know, it's only towards the end, last year of the 3 years that they get introduced to some of these methods. In Drigong Kagyu. In Karma Kagyu, as far as I know, there are 3-year retreats, even less of the 6 yogas. Because in Karma Kagyu 3-year retreat is filled with ritual practice. Like tons of it. You can check, you know, they published that book by Jamgon Kongtru, you know, on the 3-year retreat. Present day Karma Kagyu retreats are mostly based on Jamgon Kongtru's retreat manual, but even that, there are some variations. But the Karma Kagyu 3-year retreat, you know, is mostly all just ritual practice, accumulating mantras. Then a little bit of 6 yogas, you know, of course. Relatively, I think the Drigong Kagyu 3-year retreat, way less ritual practice, but still, you know, very heavy. And then I think the last year is 6 yogas. So, you know, already, I think Gampopa, you know, even in his time, was starting to teach Mahamudra without using the vocabulary of prana, you know, of channels, winds and drops, you know, things like that. He started to talk about Mahamudra using shamatha and vipassana. Which, if you look at Karma Kagyu Mahamudra text, and the most kind of influential Karma Kagyu Mahamudra instruction is an instructional text written by the 10th, I believe it's the 10th Karmapa. In that book, you can see, now the closest to that book is something that has been published as well. I mean, both these books have been published. The Karmapa's Mahamudra manual is more restricted in terms of circulation, as in it's not published by one of the main publishers. And that's one way to limit the circulation. But if you know the right people, you can end up with it. But the more general one is called the, it was first translated many years ago by the same person who first translated the songs of Milarepa, Lobsang Lalungpa. Then recently, I think Sarah Harding, I think it was Sarah Harding, did a retranslation, much more accurate. That one is called Quintessence of Mahamudra, something like that. So there you see how it's primarily shamatha vipassana. So general shamatha vipassana, then, you know, Mahamudra shamatha vipassana, and no discussion of, you know, channeling energy and all of that. So here when it says the great path of means, it's talking about how when you master, according to Milarepa's style, when you are able to harness your energy through those yogas, then you can very quickly cut through all the confusions. In that sense, Gampopa's way of teaching Mahamudra seems to say that the cutting through can, of course, be powerfully done by employing these path of means, but through devotion. So devotion is almost like a shortcut of the difficulties, of the challenging nature of those Vajrayana exercises of harnessing energy. So when Gampopa teaches Sutra Mahamudra, a constant theme that he emphasizes is devotion, 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 devotion. Almost like as a substitute for Tummo practice, prana manipulation and all of that.
Were there fierce arguments about all this?
Oh yes, oh yes. On the quote-unquote conservative side, yeah, in Gampopa's time, not in his time, because it's actually about, let's see, Gampopa, Pamodrupa, Jigten, about 3 generations later, yeah, especially Sakya Pandita, a great authority on the sutras and the tantras, one of the 5 great founders of the Sakyapa lineage. Sakya Pandita, Tibetans say, is one of 3 supreme emanations of Manjushri. Okay? He took Gampopa to task. And he wrote, you know, and really criticized Gampopa. He said Gampopa has betrayed Milarepa and perverted Milarepa's, whereas Milarepa and Marpa's Mahamudra is authentic according to the way the Indian Mahasiddhas taught it. He said Gampopa is teaching a perverted dharma. Very strong words. Sakya Pandita.
I have a question.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this song, the Dakini says to him that you will meet someone with the karmic connection.
Uh-huh.
And we spent some time last week talking a little bit about karmic connections and
yes,
sort of mystery of how we're all sitting here with you today. You know, what are the odds that we're ever going to end up in a cave and be like, you know, exactly. So like, what are we to make of, we obviously have some connection to these teachings because we're sitting here making the effort to pursue them.
Yes, yes.
But what are we to do with it, you know, in everyday life and stuff is just, I mean, obviously each of us has to figure that out ourselves, but
yeah.
Because he says, you know, later he says that for only a few in 100 will the necessary.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we have to see ourselves as incredibly fortunate in this context, but it's also, you know, like, yeah, what do we do? You know?
Right. Of course. Yeah, no.
Tell us, please.
You know, that is both the good news and the bad news.
Right. You know, I mean, I'm sitting here right now. I'm doing this thing because
It's like, esa la vida.
right.
Así es la vida.
Yeah, es la vida.
Anyway,
That is life.
that's life. Yeah.
Again, you know, like when these teachings came to the West, right? There was a lot when it first came, you know, this idea that we can have our cake and eat it too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, we're reading this, you know, and it's like, wow, you know.
Right.
But nobody really wants to do this.
Oh,
I don't.
no.
And I have, and then you can say, I can have excuses like why I cannot, right? But underlying I cannot is I don't. Let's be frank, right? So then we come back to like, so what can we do, right? Lo Jong, you know. Are we going to be Buddhas in this lifetime? Well, if we think of Buddha as a linear thing, because yeah, there are linear understandings of, here is the confused sentient being, here is the beyond confusion Buddha, right? So there's a linear way of looking at this issue, for sure. But likewise, there are also teachings that point us to the immediacy of what is Buddha. And I think we need both. If we think that the immediacy is all that there is, then we delude ourselves into thinking, oh, I'm Buddha. But if we just take the linear one, then we will give up. But not only we will give up, but if we only take the linear one, it's also, more importantly, not the whole picture, not the complete picture of reality. The complete picture of reality is Buddha can be actualized or at least experienced now.
Mm-hmm.
It can. But the Buddha that you experience now, don't confuse that with the Buddha that Siddhartha became.
Yeah.
On that fateful night, sitting under that tree. That's the linear, right? Way of thinking of confusion and enlightenment. But that's one side of this picture. There's another side of this picture where it's the eternal now, so to say. Embrace both. Don't worry about the rest.
Okay. Yeah.
So when we think, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm going to be Buddha, you know, 26 years from now, you know.
Yeah.
That's the linear one. It's certainly there, right? Then we should say, actually, probably not 26 years, maybe 26 lifetimes. But the point with the 26 lifetimes is, if your understanding of Dharma is such that 26 times is no big deal, then you're in a good place. But if your understanding of 26 lifetimes is, oh, that means now I can just, you know, watch Netflix instead, then that's not a good understanding of 26 lifetimes later, I'll be Buddha.
Yeah, well, one of the impact for me of that view is that I feel like I have to protect and preserve the Dharma, so it'll be there.
Yes.
When I come back.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like really like that's what motivates so much of what I do. That
good.
I often say for my granddaughters, but it's really for me when I come back.
Yeah. So I said to folks, you know, I said, we think of ourselves, you know, like whether you think in terms of generations, whether you think in terms of recycling, you know, that means you're going to come back, you know. Either way, you have to think, you know, whatever mistakes and lessons that I learn now, may it, you know, build what needs to be built for the future. Where the future, your biological generations, or future, you know, the people that will come, or yourself being born in the future in this context, yeah, doesn't matter, but have to think beyond. Sometimes Mahayana motivation becomes very abstract, you know, just like, oh, for the sake of all beings, for the sake of all beings, you know. But if you cannot even like, but the practical application of that is, okay, I'll give very practical, you know. Sometimes I have folks that resist, you know. They say, I don't want to learn all these things, you know. I mean, I'm not talking about someone who just arrived, you know, 2 weeks ago, but years later, you know, they still say, I don't want to chant in Tibetan. Like, what's the point? And this is after I have spent years talking about what the point is. And what the ridiculous point is as well, to say, oh, just Tibetan, just Tibetan. I also talk about that.
Right.
That's nonsense. But then the reason I get, you know, for why I don't like chanting in Tibetan. And it's like, it says, because, you know, means nothing to me. Hello, means nothing to you. But what about bigger picture? Where is the Mahayana motivation? Yeah. Because there is something about chanting in Tibetan, right? And like I've said before, I said, so if reason why we're learning to chant in Tibetan, one reason, when an old school Rinpoche who doesn't understand any English comes to this center, can we give this as an offering to him?
Yeah.
Can you think beyond just yourself? Now, he is coming here to instruct us what can make him happier for him to go, oh my God, these barbarians, they can chant in my language? You know, it's a gift you can give, right? If you are so narrow in like, I just want what I can get out of it. And then you talk about, oh, this is Mahayana motivation. It's all nonsense, you know? If your reference point is still just me. And then I also say like, so we learn to chant maybe in English and see what happens, you know? Then some people feel like, but this is not helping me right now. Okay, if you just arrived a year ago or even 2 years ago, I said, fine, let me work with you on how it will help you. But if after 4, 5, 6 years, you are still talking like that, what happened to the bodhisattva vow that you think you have? Nada. It's just a romantic idea, like, oh, for the sake of all beings, for the sake of all beings. When you're not even willing to think, well, let's experiment right now to figure out what will be helpful for people that are going to come through those doors 10 years later, 100 years later, 200 years later. Can you think like that, you know? And even for selfish reasons, it's skillful to think like that, you see? Because it's not so claustrophobic. It doesn't always have to be just right now. What do I need? How can you make me feel better? It's such a burden, you know?
Yeah, Choki Nyima talks about, he reminds us that the only thing that Tibetan people have is Dharma.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds us how.
They have momos too.
Okay, they have
That's right.
momos. Sorry.
You're like,
Yeah,
Rinpoche,
apple butter
momos.
momos and tea. But he just reminds us how many generations and they were living up there in such harsh conditions, and they devoted every single thing preserving this treasury, and therefore we have it, you know. Therefore we have it. So it's like a pretty big burden to think about.
Oh yes.
Gratitude.
Grateful for that, you know.
I'm grateful, yeah.
And then what we can do on our end to emulate that, right? Yeah, ultimately, of course, our practice will evolve to where the main language that we use in this part of the world will be our practice language. But the road to there is not so simple. And so are we willing to be the necessary conditions for that road that lead to an authentic, heartfelt, transformative practice? So bridging us there will be, you know, in this in the example I gave. That's not the only example. You don't need to fight that battle. You know, there are others. Figure out which one yours is. But just an example. I'm not saying that's a very important issue. Even it's just an example that I'm using. You know, practice in what language, and you know. But that's one example. You know. So there are many different ways, different contexts. Yeah.
Can I I say one more thing? Just one more thing. Chogyam Trungpa had everybody practice in English. And his argument was that in 400 or 500 years, English will also be a sacred language like Tibetan is, but we have to make it go there.
Right.
And the other thing is that Choki Nyima is engaged in a huge effort to translate everything into Mandarin because he wants to see, he said once, well, imagine that every single Chinese person wakes up every day and says the Heart Sutra in their native language, you know, as
they do
start their day. No, not everybody in China, right?
No, like Heart Sutra exists in Chinese.
Right, I know, but I mean, he's just saying, imagine a world where the Chinese.
I mean, Chinese actually, for that, my comment to Rinpoche would be, the Chinese have a strong Buddhist tradition, you know. I only wish they follow that tradition.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even need to adopt someone else. Like His Holiness Dalai Lama says, the Chinese are our elder brothers in the Dharma. They got Dharma 500 years before we Tibetans. Dalai Lama said, you know, I hope they remember that, you know, like we are actually the young kids on this matter, you know. He said, please, y'all, you know, don't forget your legacy. He said, you guys got the Dharma 500 years before we did, you know. Yeah, so here, you know, the second point, right? Prana control penetrating the vital point. He's talking about the manipulation of prana energy in the notes that I was talking about, the 24 notes that are blocked right now for us. So you need to direct prana to go there and like unblock, you know, these pipes. Yeah. Then, you know, all these three, right? Again, because people are used to three, so he's speaking in terms of three, right? But all these, they are not like three different things. They are almost like, you could say, three things that are talking about the same thing that needs to happen. So for example, if you just, and you could, if you could learn the prana techniques, yeah, without actually doing much work on the mind level. And so for example, again, Dalai Lama says, some people practice Powa, you know. They practice Powa so much that yeah, a hole turns up here. But their afflictive emotions have not changed the least bit. He says that's useless. So that's one example of how you can harness this prana energy and seemingly have, penetrated the channel points. But if your mind has not penetrated the expanse, that means if your mind have not yet learned to identify the expanse, that is a word for emptiness, then whatever you think you have been able to clear, those pipes inside, not very useful. It have to be combined with that, combined with the third, mastery over the mind. And that is talking about, again, sometimes we might think, between the second and the third line, sometimes we might think, oh, my mind has penetrated the expanse. So we kind of like, kind of contrive that, Why is it a contrivance? It's a contrivance because that is just when, the room temperature is right. The neighbors are not having a party, and they are parked in your parking spot, right? And then you're like, oh, it's in the expanse now. Yeah. But the minute something turns up, so that's the third line. Penetrating mastery over your mind. Likewise, like in Gampopa's way of teaching Mahamudra, the more sutra way, right? It talks about how sometimes it talks about you need to clear all your thoughts and your concepts. Yeah? Sometimes it talks like this. It says, until, the mass of mentation. Mentation is a pretty cool word, but also pretty confusing. Like, what the hell does that mean? Nobody who doesn't study this thing will use this word mentation. Mentation is the process of, right? Menting. That's also not an English word, right? So the mass of mentation, if that's not dispersed, right? Then the sun and moon of the mind will not be seen. Right? So that is mastery over your mind. And so how do you clear, right, the mass of mentation? You train in shamatha. At least you train first with calm abiding. But at some point, that can also change. Vipassana can also clear. Meaning insight, understanding the nature of mentation can also clear mentation. But ultimately, that is the only way to clear mentation, which is not literally trying to get rid of thoughts, which while you're training shamatha, you are doing that, okay? But the where you want to arrive at is not to constantly be in a state where nothing is going on, because that's not possible. Because that's not possible. But at the beginning, you do have to put in effort in, don't think other things. Because you're being dragged around, And if you're being dragged around, no insight, no vipassana can develop. So as a preliminary, you need mastery over your mind. You need to create a controlled environment for you to learn how to drive. When you have learned how to drive, you no longer, when you get on the road, you no longer, hey, get out of my way. Hey, get out of my way. That's the control environment. Yeah. So then at that point, the mass of mentation, it's not so much that it's not there, but it cannot affect you anymore. And that is that line, mind penetrating into the expanse. If I was editing this song, I would change the position of the the second and the third. I would change the position a little bit, at least in the way that I am unpacking these three lines. I think the mastery of the mind is a more preliminary, almost like shamatha training. And then penetrating into the expanse is more the vipassana, the insight. So you have shamatha, you have vipassana, and then you have energy manipulation. One very simple energy manipulation, right? If without needing to go all the way to Vajrayana, you know, without needing to do, have you all seen some of those exercises on YouTube? You can see, you know, yeah. Most of us, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but I am going to generalize. Most of us I'm looking at right now, myself included, if you try to do that, right, first, make sure you have health insurance. 2, make sure it's not a weekend night, because the ER is very busy on a weekend night. The way they jump and bounce, you know, it's like TM does that too. TM called that yogic flying. That's what, it's the same as what TM calls yogic flying. You bounce, you know, but the way you bounce is not like sitting like this, you will start bouncing necessarily. Although you can do that, but that a very supple body. At first, when you first do this, you basically launch into the lotus position by basically jumping onto the meditation seat.
No.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, you know, you can see. And that's why they start at 16, you know.
Yeah.
You basically like jump onto the meditation seat and get into lotus position. And the momentum from jumping onto the floor, in the old country, no cushion, the floor. You hop onto the floor, but the momentum from hopping onto the floor, you can bounce up. And I have seen pictures of them bouncing, their head almost touching the ceiling. Granted, retreat huts are not as tall as 9 foot, you know, a vaulted ceiling, but still very impressive, right? And that's the kind of prana we're talking about. That's why, Karen, imagine me trying to teach that. I will first injure myself. That's not very impressive, you know. It will not inspire anyone to practice this.
I'll have to share an ambulance.
Yeah. But one simple thing to show how, right?
Hey, we'll do it on a weekday.
Yeah. One simple way to show how certain kind of manipulating energy can help the mind, right? Which is a method I teach as well. And this one I can teach, very simple, you know. Sometimes when the mind is so scattered, right? Stop breathing. Hold your breath. When you hold your breath, either the mind returns or not. It sounds funny and it sounds like a joke, but it's not. It's the same principle. Because when you hold your breath, certain energies are being harnessed. And then the mind, wherever it's wandering, it comes back. Now, whether it's going to stay back when you start breathing again, practice. So hold your breath. Then, You know, the mind still wonder. Until a certain point, it figures out, wait. If I don't come back, I might not be able to come back, you know. Then it'll come back. Then you can breathe more naturally. Then hold your breath again. Then it can breathe more naturally. Yeah. So this prana business, right? The Taoists figure out how to manipulate energy. Various branch of Hindus figure out how to manipulate energy. Buddhists also figure out how to manipulate the energy. But the manipulating of the energy itself, if it is not wedded with the Buddhist project, then it can lead to whatever result you want. So 20 years ago, I think Sting, in an interview with Yoga Journal, talked about manipulating energy for 9-hour sex with someone you really love. Well, that's harnessing energy, right? That's not going to lead to Buddhahood. It will lead to more attachment. So the technique is not exclusive to Buddhist. Many traditions figured out how to manipulate energy, but the reason for manipulating energy for Milarepa is for the Buddhist project, so to say. The 3 accomplishments, command of the Guru is accomplished. And the command of the Guru is to practice the Dharma. When you follow that, then the reality of your mind can be accomplished. And when you see your own situation, then how to be of benefit to other people can be accomplished. Outer obstructing spirits and demons are pacified. Inner afflictions are pacified. Sickness of the body is pacified. Yeah, so these 3, again, like I said, the 3 aren't necessarily step 1, step 2, step 3. Yeah. The last one, I would say there is a certain linear step 1, step 2, step 3, but they mutually inform each other. But in this one is not necessarily step 1, step 2, step 3. Yeah. But it is talking about how if you wed external conditions and inner conditions, then sickness of body can go. Okay? So to me, what are the demons and obstructing spirits? Cholesterol, sugar, salt, etc., right? Those are the outer obstructing spirits and demons. Yeah? So you need to pacify them. You cannot keep eating them and hope, oh, inside I'm going to, Yeah. Then outer pacifying of those demons and spirits, right? Because in Tibet, demons and spirits are quite real for us, cholesterol and sugar is quite real. Growing up in Malaysia, sugar was never a demon. I think I've talked about this. No? Some of you remember I've talked about this, We never have the concept of, if you eat sugar, you'll be hyper. No, nothing at all, with kids. Oh, it's evening, no dessert because they will go crazy. No concept of that. Now my godkids who live behind, mother is Taiwanese, father is white American, and yeah, they're not raised with the concept that sugar will make you crazy. And for the most part, they don't go crazy when they have candy. I know because they come over here to get candy. Dad doesn't like candy at their house. Mom has no issues at all. Then also they come over here, right? Right before dinner to get their candy. Then they go back and they eat dinner, just normal. Nothing about spoiling the appetite. So anyway, whatever you conceptualize, however you conceptualize outer obstructing demons and spirits, you should pacify that, okay? Then inner. But if your mind, you don't figure out how to relax. If you're a control freak about sugar, yes, you are very healthy in your diet, but you're a miserable person. Then sickness will come. You don't want bodily sickness. You have to figure a balance, between outer and inner. Pacify both of those. So the next one is Milarepa, right? Expert with poetic words. He can use just the right words. And he's good at answering the questions of random people who turn up and say, tell me something, teach me something, Like I said, like for me, it's easier to teach people who are already brainwashed, Like y'all, That's easier to teach, Then put me in the context of pastoral work, like talking to a random person who is like maybe dying in a hospital. I said, I'm not trained to do that because I don't know what this person knows or doesn't know about Dharma. And I can tell you, I'm not very helpful if I go and try to answer their questions or try to say something, because their whole understanding of what the problem and what the solution is so different. But here, Milarepa is reminding me, reminding everyone, the third one, if you become an expert in understanding the nature of your mind, then the other two can come easier. Because when it comes to the nature of your mind, then no different, one from one person to another. Then at that point, the more you are, as we say, in touch with the reality of your mind, then even when you are with someone that you do not know at all, and you learn to kind of tap into, so to say, that nature of mind, then the right words will come. More conventionally, we say, I guess, right? Just be there for that person. Maybe don't start with like, oh, what am I going to say? Just be there. Then what needs to be said, what you're going to say or not say, it can come. That's secondary. Nature of mind. So heart has to be there first. So I'm answering my own problem. If heart is there, then don't worry about, the other things. But of course, not so easy, for heart to be there. That's also true. We might like the idea that, I will let my heart be there. Also not so easy. Then in that case, better to get someone who is trained to know the right things to say. One sees bliss as not a real thing. One sees appearances nakedly. That means not clothed in deception. 3, one sees them as free of labels. And so these 3 are the 3 aspects of seeing. In Vajrayana, control of energy and all that is very much related to heightening the experience of pleasure or bliss. So that is used as a way of harnessing. Again, as I said, if you are sting, then it's harnessed for the wrong, according to Buddha, wrong reasons, It's for attachment, harnessing bliss and pleasure. But here, even that, it says, you have to be able to see that it is not real. That means no attachment. See that. Then see the experience directly without any overlay of attachment or aversion. Then you can see that everything, right now at least, everything is based on labels. We are just acting and reacting to labels. But when finally we can see beyond the labels, then we can be free. Then the last gathering is the context of that song. In the Ganachakra gathering. Yeah, 1:30.
Thank you so much.
12:30. Different time zones. All of China, there's only one time zone. That's so crazy.
Wow.
Basically, they fall into 4 time zones, I think. But welcome to a communist system. Well, it's not communism so much as authoritarian. They're like, just put one time zone, the time zone where the capital is. Everybody else can adjust accordingly.
Okay.
So next Sunday is the Sunday I won't be able to meet. I'm doing a teaching on the Medicine Buddha Sadhana.
All right.
Yeah. Then the following Sunday is the retreat Sunday. So those 2 Sundays, I won't be able to meet with you guys. Yeah. Then we'll continue after that.
Thank you so much for this. It was an incredible illumination of this song.
Thank you. I got to get ready for the next meeting.
Yeah. Ta-ta.
Bye, ta-ta.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you. Bye.
We're last to leave, aren't we? Well,